Hey, what's up? So, I built this guitar from a kit, and we're going to go through that process and see how it sounds. Stay tuned. So, over the last 3 weeks or so, I've been documenting how I've built this guitar from the headstock to the body to the electronics. And this kit that I got from Solo Guitars has been pretty fun and enlightening, to say the least. So, I figured we'll go through the process, check out what I did, and at the end, I'll demo this in a full mix, and you'll get to see how it sounds. So, let's go. So, my first order of business with this whole project was to get the neck prepped. And what it really involved was just putting a coat of boiled linseed oil pretty much all over the neck except for the fretboard. Now the next step to this could be that I hit it up with some 800 grit sandpaper and reapply some more oil just to give it a little bit more of a darker sheen, but really all I'm trying to do is get that maple wood to kind of pop out a little bit. Beyond this, I still haven't decided if I'm going to put a satin finish on the back of the neck or not. I'll definitely put one on the front of the headstock, but that'll be like one of the last things I do. And here is the second coat applied, gonna dry. This one is basically gonna sit for about a week as is, and then from that point on, I'll decide if I'm going to do a satin clear coat or not. My next order of business in this whole thing was to sand down the front and the back of the guitar body. Now, since there is a binding around the entire body, I'm going to do a dual tone, which is I'm going to put the blue color up front. It's a solid color, so I need to primer it first. And then there's going to be the mahogany translucent color in the back. So from this point, I taped around and masked off all the spots that I really needed to. Don't need to mask off the whole back since the primer really shouldn't reach the back if I'm spraying correctly. And once it's primered, it'll sit for a day. I'll probably put about 3 coats of primer on it, and then I'll be ready to paint it. Alright, so I had my primer all done yesterday. I had a couple spots that I had to level out this morning by sanding down with a little bit of sandpaper. Went ahead and put another coat of primer on just to make it more even. I even went around and exposed some of the black binding here because we want to keep that exposed before we do our final satin clear coat. And now we're ready to move on to the color phase. So I got the front all done last night, put all my coats on. Not too bad. I'm gonna take the tape off carefully. Then I have to go around the edges with some sandpaper to expose the binding. And then from that point, I'm going to reverse mask it and start working on the back. Alright, so we got this all reverse masked off. I did a sheet of paper, and then around the edges I tried to keep it kind of loose because I really don't want a whole lot of sticky stuff on that first coat on the front. But we're ready to do the back. So as you can see, I had a couple issues with my initial pass on the back here. Wasn't quite prepared for some of the awkward angles when it comes to the sides, and ultimately the back I just wanted to look mostly like this. It's a little splotchy, but it would have gotten covered up in subsequent passes. So in about an hour I'm gonna have to pull this down, sand it to get rid of these kind of thick spots, get it down to where it looks more like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on just getting the back part evenly coated and then I'll move on to the sides and bottom, which weren't too bad. And then I brought my ladder out so I can actually get up and spray the top with the proper distance without having to manipulate the actual apparatus. So, fun times. So here's the back of the guitar. I was able to finish it with a little bit more of an even coat than what you saw before. Obviously I had to do a bit of repair. I also had an incident where I accidentally sprayed some primer on it on accident, and I had to go and basically sand off the whole top end here to a degree to where I could come back and respray it. You can kind of see where coverage is a little bit lighter because of that, and due to that fact I ended up running out of lacquer. So for the most part it still looks cool though. It looks a lot redder on camera. It's a bit darker in person. You know, then you come around to the front and you have the dual tone, the mahogany with the blue. From a distance you can't really tell. Once I satin clear coat these edges here and everything gets satin, you know, finished, a lot of this, you know, a lot of the, you know, kind of weird little orange peel pieces will likely kind of disappear. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with it. So, on to the next step. Alright, so here's where we're at with the body. This has been sitting for about a day or so, and everything's painted. Now it's time to put on the clear coat. And we're going to be doing satin, so I'm going to do the first round of satin clear coat, see how that looks, see if I need to knock down any spots or do any kind of dry sanding. Otherwise, I'll just move on, and I'm really just trying to do no more than 3 coats of satin clear coat. Just trying to get this sheen to kind of even out. You know, a lot of this texture will just become one homogeneous texture. You won't really see as much of the lines from the wood grain or anything like that. So, yep, on to the next. So, quick update here. I decided to go with a matched headstock. I was gonna keep it natural, but the more I kept looking at the body, I was like, man, it would just look really cool with a matched headstock. So, went ahead and sprayed 3 coats of the Nitro cellulose lacquer, and yeah, it looks pretty solid. I think it'll turn out pretty good. Hey, so we're about at the midway point of my build here. It's been about a week since I've put the satin finish on the entire guitar. I went with the dual tone, as you saw in the videos, back and front. So the back is kind of like this red mahogany, kind of translucent wood thing going on, whereas the front is a kind of metallic blue paint. I was a little concerned about, you know, doing the dual tone with the binding, but I realized that I just needed to not worry about the binding so much, because I did eventually have to sand and scrape down to expose that binding. But when all was said and done, it actually came out pretty good. You can really see it there. On top of that, because I'm using nitrocellulose lacquer, you know, this is one of those products that takes a while to fully cure and harden. Even though it's a pretty quick to dry to the touch like product, it probably won't become fully, you know, dry or as dry as it's gonna get for a few weeks. However, once I'm able to determine that the hardness of the lacquer is enough that I can basically take my fingernail and, you know, I don't get like an egregious dent by just touching it, I'll know that it's ready for hardware. And I think we're pretty close to that, actually. On top of that, you know, you smell the guitar, and you can see that, or you can smell that the chemicals and the lacquer have fully degassed off of the, you know, the body of the guitar itself. For the first 3 days, this thing just, you know, reeked of lacquer, and now it just kind of smells slightly like, you know, a wood shop, but it's, you know, it's close. So my next step is going to be to assemble it and wire it up. And even then, once it's all wired up and assembled, I'm probably still going to give it about another week before I actually play on it, because I just don't want to inadvertently put too much pressure from some random piece of metal or something. I don't know. There's a lot of finickiness when it comes to nitrocellulose lacquer, and I'm not a professional by any means, so I don't really want to do something that's going to completely mess this up. With that said, I went ahead and did a matching headstock, and I'm going to put a picture somewhere over here where you can kind of see what I did with that. It's about a day behind in terms of application, so it's not been curing for quite a week, but once that is fully cured, I'll put the machine heads on so I can do kind of a neck test alignment thing. And then word of advice, if you want to beforehand, go ahead and put that neck on first, string it up loosely, just so you can see that the strings don't deviate off of the sides of the fretboard like super bad. I don't think I'm going to have that problem, but yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with this. So we're on to the next step. What's up? So I'm at the point now, I'm getting ready to assemble everything. I went ahead and test fit the neck, and everything looks cool. Went ahead and put on all my shielding tape. I'm gonna run some metal wire through the cavities to ground them to each other, and then we're gonna go ahead and put it all together. I gotta loosen up the neck to get the pick guard on. I actually went with a brushed metal pick guard, and I also picked up a humbucker size P90 for the neck, just a cheap one that had decent reviews and had a okay output. And so once that's all together, this thing will be on its way to being playable. All right, so I have all my hardware installed, pickups, bridge, and then tuners. Something interesting I did with the tuners, I went ahead and I used the silver collars from the stock tuners that came with the kit, and then I used those on top of the black locking tuners that I had. Kind of gives it a little bit more of a breakup in the look. One thing I like to do with locking tuners is I like to take a piece of my thickest string from an old set or something that's got a lot of ridges to it, and I like to take it and run it through the locking tuner here, just with the locking tuner barely engaged, like not even barely touching the string. And then I just like to run it through just to kind of give a little bit of a polish, or kind of like a sanding to the little nub that's inside the locking tuner that presses down on the actual string. Just, these are kind of cheap locking tuners, so if there's any sharp edges, just want to make sure those are flat. And you'll do that for every single one of these. And beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and polish up the frets, condition the fretboard a little bit, and then put the strings on. Hey, what's up? So it's been a couple weeks since I put the strings on the guitar. One of the things that I meant to do, and I was able to do, was keep the strings on for about a week, kind of let it acclimate in the house. Didn't play it too much, just kind of, every now and then check the action, check the truss, check the relief on the guitar, and just kind of let it hang out because I didn't want to really dig into it. So this last week, I finally got into it and did a little bit more maintenance, started to kind of see how this sounded. Well, there were a few things that I had to take care of in the process. The first one being that the pickup that I put in, the quarter-pound telly, the first one I had installed, somehow the tape around the coils had gotten kind of messed up and some of the windings got sheared off. So that just pretty much killed the pickup. So I had to send that back and get a different one. The second one that I installed here has a much better fit in the guitar. and no issues. Sounds great. The other thing I did was I went ahead and I kind of messed with the electronic setup. It came with 250K pots for the volume and the tone. The first thing I did was I was thinking, you know what? I want to brighten this up. I want to give it a little bit more punch. So I put two 500K pots in, wired it back up, and it sounded too bright. It was just really top end heavy, and with this P90 being kind of an overwound single coil as it were, things just got a little bit too present. And so thought about it, and I decided I'll keep the 500K volume pot because I still do want that a little bit brighter sound, especially out of this pickup, which is very mid-range heavy. And I went back to the 250K pot that came in the guitar, and it sounds perfect to me. It sounds exactly how I want it. It's just got a little bit more top end. This is a very mid-range heavy pickup. This is a very kind of rounded, kind of throaty sounding P90 style pickup, and it all sounds good. The original Tele pickup, you know, I do like the sound of them, but at the same time, I don't know, I just wanted something with a little bit more meat to it. So I found this cheap Amazon thing, and it actually sounds pretty good. So we'll check that out. The other thing that I did, which is kind of, you know, different, is I stressed the metal on both the control plate and the bridge plate. So I just like that kind of rustic look. Since I was getting the brass saddles, I just wanted it to be a little bit more, I don't know, worn in looking. So I did that. And just as a heads up, if you're going to do anything with the electronics in these kit guitars, at least the solo kits, and I don't have enough experience with like commercial built Telecasters to know if this is across the board for Teles, but a standard size CTS pot won't fit in the cavity without routing it. I initially started to use full size pots because I have some just laying around, and I fit it to the plate here, and I thought, oh, cool. It fits under the plate with, you know, some clearance around the edge. Well, that didn't translate into the fact that it didn't actually fit into the routed cavity. So just be aware of that. You will have to use mini pots if you're going to do any kind of electronics work with at least a solo Telecaster kit. Unfortunately, you know, messing with electronics, messing with all the stuff that I did, I already got a few dings and scratches in the guitar. Just happens to be that way. So the other thing I had to do, and if you get a solo kit or any guitar kit, you'll have to maybe contend with this, is I had to really cut the nut. The every string at the first fret was like 3 to 4 cents sharp. You know, so this is an E. Well, actually, it's E flat. This E was like wildly sharp, and so I tested every single string, and of course they all were just like ridiculously sharp. So I had to file down the nut slots almost like double what they came. I mean, it was pretty bad. But doing that, it immediately made the guitar like just set into its intonation. Everything just straight up was like 100% better once I filed the nut down. The other thing I did was I painted the hex key, you know, slot there black because it looked kind of weird just keeping it natural. Yeah, so beyond that, you know, I mean, it's a great kit. Cool color on the back. You know, the painting and the finishing wasn't too bad. I went ahead and polished up the front a little bit. It's not quite the satin finish that I had initially intended. I decided that I like the satin on the back, you know, that real kind of dull luster. But then I went and I said, you know what? I got a couple scratches and some dings here. Let's use some automotive scratch remover, because I wasn't going to refinish on a gloss, and I don't really want a gloss finish, but you know, just use a swirl remover, you know, hit it up a few times, and now I got a little bit more of a sheen going on in the front. and then kind of contrast with the back. So yeah, with that said, this guitar is 100% ready to go, and so I'm going to take it in to my studio space and plug it in, and we'll see what it sounds like.